Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson. Today we're listening to The Case that Haunts Her.
Priscilla remained calm as the judge read the sentence, death by execution. Josue Flores was murdered last Tuesday on his way home from school.
Officers tell us Trujillo stabbed her boyfriend with stiletto heeled shoes.
Police say the suspect may be responsible for the murders of at least 6 women whose bodies have been found in or near the Acres Homes area.
Defense attorneys had argued that Yates was legally insane and grossly psychotic when she drowned the children. One by one, they described the deaths of the alleged other 8 victims of the convicted rail car killer.
This is wild that a female would be locked up in a dungeon with a bunch of killers' weapons and stuff like that. What kind of woman is this?
Psychopath. Psychopath dealing with psychopath stuff.
Well,
They asked me, how can you do it? How can you sit in that room? It doesn't bother me. I don't know, am I heartless or what? But it doesn't bother me. It took me 20 years to enjoy my job. But I thoroughly enjoy my job. I only have one drawback to my job. My commute. But that proves to you right there that I like my job. How many people would make the commute of 106 miles when you're eligible to retire?
Tell me what's in here.
What's not in here? You name it. You name it. The only thing, 3 items I do not receive from the courts are guns, drugs, and live ammo. My name is Rhonda Spinks. I am the Senior Criminal Exhibit Clerk for the Harris County District Clerk's Office. This room contains all the exhibits from both misdemeanor and felony courts. All cases. Misdemeanor, felony, felony capitals, everything, anything that is submitted as an exhibit to the court reporter. What happens is I schedule appointments with the court reporters, and I go downtown to their offices, and they submit them to me, and then I bring them back here and start processing them. Every single one of them. I had a case one time a court reporter turned into me, and when I'm going through the photographs, I'm not looking at the photograph really. I'm just looking for the exhibit number, because if I looked at every photograph, it would take forever. So I'm flipping through. I'd flip over a stack, flip through. Well, I just happened to flip over, and the next photograph, I look down, and I'm like, where's the man's head? No, it's in the Walmart bag there by his body.
I mean, you got some weird stuff in this room. You got machetes, you got mannequins, you got swords, you got pipe
Car doors, pipe bombs that I didn't even know I had. That's what I'm saying. I don't know half the stuff that's in this room because who has time to go through all these boxes? Each case is different. They're the same but different at the same time, if that makes any sense. A murder is a murder, but how they were murdered is, the stuff you receive. Anna Trujillo, the stiletto killer.
Early Sunday morning, officers say they got a call regarding an altercation in an upstairs unit. When they arrived, investigators say Trujillo opened the door. Moments later, they found her 59-year-old boyfriend covered in blood on the floor.
She killed with her, must be about a 6 or a 7 inch stiletto heel. I think it's this box. And there's still hair on the heel. I would break my neck in a shoe like that. And from what I understand, they were pretty expensive shoes.
All I had was my shoes, so I just took my shoe off, and I didn't know what else to do, and I just started to hit him.
Burnt stove.
7 children were inside the home daycare on February 24, 2011. 4 would not survive. On the day of the fire, investigators began to doubt Jessica Tata's story of what happened inside.
She left a pot on the stove and went to Target and left the kids in the daycare. And I'll have 2 stoves forever because it's a high-profile case. Well, I won't have them forever because I'll eventually retire, but somebody's going to have them forever.
Prosecutors argued Tata's negligence was to blame.
Today's the day, and now is the time, and you are the people that should hold this defendant responsible.
I don't even call that negligence. I call it stupidity. And my daddy always told me, don't ever call anybody stupid. She was stupid. Let's go back over this way. Irsan, this was my very first case that I entered. Honor killing.
Ali Irsan has been connected to 3 deaths. In fact, several members of Irsan's family have been linked to crimes.
Ali Awad Muhammad Irsan.
What about him?
Him and his son were charged with killing his daughter's best friend and his daughter's husband.
The jury found no mitigating circumstances that would have allowed sparing Irsan's life.
And once the dad got the death penalty, the son took a plea. He got 40 years, I think. Oh, we got a good one for you. Does Carla Faye Tucker ring a bell to you? That's her pickaxe.
I had to cry out to God, let him know that what I'd done was horrible and that I needed forgiveness.
Forgiveness for murdering a man and a woman with a pickaxe during a 1983 break-in.
She murdered somebody and there's actual photos with the pickaxe still in the body. I didn't even know that till yesterday. She is historical because she was the first woman executed since like the 1800s or sometime. Civil War, I think you said, or something? Long time ago. But this shows you how old this case is. VHS and cassette. There's actually a retention period for misdemeanor cases and felonies up to 5 years is actually only 1 year from the final judgment. But if they're still in prison, I hold on to them because they could need them for anything while they're still. Now, once they're not incarcerated anymore for whatever reason, they got out on their own, they died in prison, or they were executed. I don't have a problem getting rid as long as it's not a high-profile case. Jose Flores case.
Most wakes are heartbreaking. This one is gut-wrenching. 11-year-old Josue Flores was, by every account, and we've heard many of them, as special a kid as they come.
So in a room with thousands of boxes.
Thousands.
That's the one.
Yeah. The one case in this room that just tugs at my heartstrings. And I try not to let that happen because I have to be strong in this job. But it was, you take one of those deep breath kind of things every time I pull this case down off the shelf. A little 10-year-old boy innocently murdered. I mean, I don't know, that one got to me.
He was such a loving, smart boy, and he never been mean to anyone. He always, when somebody's mean to him, he would just say, "I'm sorry, let's be friends."
Josue was stabbed to death here at Fulton and James. Prosecutors have charged 27-year-old Andre Jackson Jr. with Josue's murder. They say surveillance video and his ATM card linked him to the area the afternoon Josue was killed.
Pure evil. And then he claimed self-defense.
Okay, listen, you're here, running here. I want to know the truth, Andre. Are you a monster?
No.
He was an innocent boy walking home from school. I mean, a lot of these murder victims are innocent people at the wrong place at the wrong time. Which he was, he wasn't even in the wrong place at the wrong time because he was walking home from school. Can't explain it.
Remember your little brother, little sister?
Yes.
At that time in your life?
Yes.
If somebody harmed your brother or sister, wouldn't you want everyone to help? The whole world would want to help. And I know deep down inside that you're going to want to help.
Sir, I understand
what you're saying and everything like that. But I didn't kill this guy. And obviously I was in the area. I'm just not comfortable talking about what I seen and why I was running in the area. I'm trying to do my job. You swore an oath to the U.S. Constitution to protect these people right here. This was your life. This, as a United States Marine, is your sole mission in life. Your mission is to protect these people. My mission is to protect these people. And my mission is to get to the truth here. So all I want is the truth.
A judge Wednesday sentenced Andre Jackson, the man convicted of killing Josue Flores, to life in prison.
Your Honor, I'm asking you to right the wrongs in the system.
Jackson, in a written statement, begged the judge for 5 years. He cited an unfair case, one he wrote relied on revenge rather than justice. But after speaking for some 16 minutes, Jackson learned he'd spend the rest of his life behind bars.
Justice was done today for Josue Flores. In one of the photos, you look on the clock in the photo, and I think it reads 3:30 or 4, and then 30 minutes later he was gone. It's sad, really sad.
And a surveillance report released by the CDC this week shows Texas is already experiencing moderate levels of flu activity.
So you talk about your mom, does she like brag on you? I love my mother, but she's tough. She's tough. Yeah. Yeah. I think in my 56 years, I've seen her cry maybe once or twice. Yeah. I take a lot of my job home mentally, and I shouldn't. Because I'm passionate about my job. They always came, do you want a little coffee with your creamer?
How many do you take? 8. What flavor do you like?
Caramel macchiato.
Looks like your own Starbucks.
Mr. Sherman, can I help you? It's a capital murder. I've always been interested in criminal justice. And back in my younger days, when my college years that I didn't finish, I was majoring in criminal justice. So I don't know, it just kind of goes along with it. Back in 2019, I was the civil exhibit clerk. I had been civil exhibits for 15 years. And the lady that was over criminal exhibits prior to me was retiring. And I just thought it would be interesting.
How has this job changed you?
No, I don't think it's changed me. I really don't. Because even when I did the civil exhibits for 15 years, I was very meticulous about that too.
Were you that strong, as you say, prior to coming in this room?
Yes. Yeah, I was. I think that's one of the things that helped me coming in here. Strong, organized, meticulous. makes me tick is my heart.
I want you to be as true
People
to
are
yourself.
intimidated by me.
Why?
That's what I don't know. Because I think inside, I can be a bee, and then 30 seconds later I could be crying. You wouldn't see that.
What's that?
You wouldn't see that. I was bullied in school. Kids bully for stupid reasons. I never told my parents. Never. From the 6th grade through senior in high school, I never told my parents. I didn't tell them until a few years ago. I was bullied in high school. What? Went in the military, I was still timid. Had a coworker. He was about 6'4", 6'5", and he walks up to me and he goes, he sniffs the top of my head. And it was like a switch went off in my head. Said a few choice words to him, and I never looked back. Nobody ever bullied me again. He got the death sentence, so let's look and see if he's still on death row, then it's going to be downtown.
What does your dad think about all this?
I don't think he gets what all this entails. I don't think, he realizes what all's, because he's never been here.
If he's never seen it, I'd like to see what his reaction is and how you present stuff to him.
Is Dad there? Can I talk to him? Hey, Papa. My big Poppy. You love me? You love me? How much you love me? Would you be willing to come down to my job so I could give you a tour of my room? All right. See you at about noon 30. Bye.
This is what we look like packing up to move after 38 years.
Ronald Haskell. He drove from Utah, and the wife or ex-wife's family, he killed her and I don't know how many children. He dressed up as like a FedEx employee.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I have his FedEx uniform in here. The FedEx uniform, the court reporter turned in the shoes, the shorts, the shirt, and the hat. And she told me, Rhonda, if they had turned in his underwear, I was done. Those were her words.
What do y'all think about your daughter being in this room with all this stuff?
I think nothing short of her, because I know that's the type of person she is. She likes stuff like this.
Now I know where her migraine headaches come from.
The other day, I told him I'm just like him in the sense of I get something on my brain, and my brain can't shut down at night.
Physical appearance, she looks like me. Other things.
Like what?
Well, we won't go there on.
She had no name.
I didn't. Oh, you're Jean's daughter.
And up until I retired, she still didn't have a name. And you're Jean's daughter. Everybody knew Jean, but they didn't know Rhonda.
Yeah, she's retired from Harris County also. But yeah, I didn't have an identity. I always said some of these cases, that's why people commit crimes, because they have no identity. Thank goodness I didn't take after them.
Yeah, she's a hard worker, and we're proud of her.
I joke and say whoever takes over after me is gonna need a stepladder.
On the next episode of The Evidence Room.
Ronald Clark O'Brien was notorious for two reasons. He killed his own son, and he ruined the tradition of Halloween trick-or-treating.
His own wife said he was an exaggerator, he was a narcissist. To the end, he was the kind of guy. Let me explain. This guy was a true definition of a loser, but it's deeper than that. I mean, this is a man, like I said before, who had no problem killing his own children and 3 other kids in the neighborhood just for some insurance money.
Her son remained calm as the judge read the sentence, death by execution.
Josue Flores was murdered last Tuesday on his way home from school.
That nightmare of the night was so real. You stopped working there. So much credit.
Officers tell us Trujillo stabbed her boyfriend with stiletto heeled shoes.
Police say the suspect may be responsible for the murders of at least 6 women whose bodies have been found in or near the Acres Homes area.
Defense attorneys had argued that Yates was legally insane and grossly psychotic when she drowned the children. One by one, they described the deaths of the alleged other 8 victims of the convicted rail car killer.
Welcome to the Evidence Room, and thank you for joining us for our second episode, The Man Who Killed Halloween. I'm Robert Arnold.
And I'm Jason Wynn. I'm really excited to learn who killed Halloween because it affects everyone.
Just really quick, what's your opinion on O'Brien, Pixie Stick Killer? What do you think about him?
He was evil. He killed his own son. I mean, his daughter could have died too, but she didn't eat the pixie stick.
And in case you missed it, Rhonda was in our first episode. You can see that on click2houston.com. But she was really the one that gave us the access for the evidence room. And we got to dig into some big files.
To use a pixie stick.
On a child. An innocent child. Your own child. Sick.
We just got to hear from Rhonda in the evidence room.
Yes, and one of the things that was interesting when I called Rhonda and said, okay, this is going to be one of the cases that I wanted to profile because I've known it my whole life, she was surprised to say, there's not a lot here left on this guy.
I could just imagine that phone call and her talking about that case file being small.
She was surprised because typically cases that are notorious and have become what is referred to as high profile, typically the trial exhibits stick around for a very, very long time. So it was surprising that The Man Who Killed Halloween, there wasn't a lot left.
And let's get into our second case because it's a doozy of a one.
Yeah, Ronald Clark O'Brien.
I heard he changed Halloween.
Ronald Clark O'Brien. Now, his fellow death row inmates nicknamed him the Candyman.
We're not talking about the Candyman, are we, Robert?
Unfortunately, Houston has been unlucky enough to have two killers named the Candyman.
O'Brien gave his son and 4 other children poison Halloween candy back in 1974. Only 8-year-old Timmy O'Brien ate that candy and died.
Tell me a little bit more about the Candyman, because I'm new to Houston, and this has really affected a lot of people.
Well, first of all, when I was researching this case, the line that kept popping up in my head comes from one of my all-time favorite Stephen King novels, The Shining. Monsters are real, ghosts are real too. They live inside all of us, and sometimes they win. And I think that really sums up who this guy is. Matter of fact, a KPRC2 report from nearly 40 years ago very succinctly spells out his legacy.
Ronald Clark O'Brien was notorious for 2 reasons. He killed his own son, and he ruined the tradition of Halloween trick-or-treating.
That was a lot right there, but tell me how it affected you, your family, your kids, your wife.
Well, I think one of the things when my wife was pregnant with our first child, our son, one of the things that my mom told me was, prepare yourself. You're always going to worry. No matter how old they get, you're always going to worry about their well-being. They're always going to be your child. And I do believe that the vast majority of parents are like that. You remember when you went trick-or-treating, it was the same with me. Did your mom, you got to check the candy, we've got to go everything, you're not allowed to eat anything until
it might have been because of this case, to tell you the honest truth.
He's definitely one of the reasons that kids everywhere have to check their candy, and whether you realize it or not, you've heard about this guy in some form or fashion.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, my mom, she was a nurse. She was very clear on check your candy. Make sure it isn't open. Make sure it's not tampered with. And I think that has a lot to do with these pixie sticks.
The fear and suspicion his crime unleashed lives every Halloween.
Let's go back to 1974. Halloween, it's raining. O'Brien, his wife, their 2 kids, live in Deer Park, but they go to neighboring Pasadena to a friend's house.
This is the Pasadena neighborhood where Jimmy Bates and Ron O'Brien took their 4 children trick-or-treating back in Halloween of 1974. There were 4 children, Kimberly Bates and Elizabeth O'Brien, and the 2 boys, Timmy O'Brien and his best friend, Mark.
O'Brien, another father, O'Brien's 2 children, and that other father's 2 children all go out trick-or-treating in this neighborhood.
I, of course, won't ever forget it.
Jimmy Bates was betrayed by Ronald Clark O'Brien.
Bates said that before Halloween, O'Brien asked if he could bring his children over to trick-or-treat with the Bates children on Halloween night. Both families ate dinner together, and then the fathers took the children trick-or-treating.
At the time, it was a newer neighborhood. In fact, by today's geography, it's north of Red Bluff Road, right off of Beltway. Beltway wasn't even around.
Really? So it was, okay, so that really puts it in perspective.
After they're finished trick-or-treating,
all 4 children were given pixie sticks laced with cyanide. A 5th child was given a poison stick at the Bates house.
O'Brien takes his kids home. His daughter is tired. She's younger. He sends her to bed. Tim, O'Brien's little boy, really wanted the pixie stick. This big old pixie, so that's when his dad opened it. You remember pixie sticks, the straws, they got the different colored.
Yeah, and they're even bigger nowadays.
Right, exactly. So O'Brien's at home with his 2 children. Each one has a pixie stick, and the little boy wants to eat his pixie stick. So O'Brien helps him open it, helps him actually break it up and pours it into his mouth.
Tim's his kid.
Yeah, Tim is O'Brien's son, 8-year-old son.
He was a very active child, almost hyper, and really a sweet kid.
Jimmy Bates remembers Timmy O'Brien. His own son, Mark, and Timmy were both 3rd graders at Carpenter Elementary School.
And so, according to the court documents and prosecutors, almost instantly after Tim starts ingesting the sugar from the pixie stick, he starts convulsing, his stomach is killing him, and I mean, it's horrible. That really gets into how this story happened and how O'Brien got caught.
How long did it take police to start suspecting O'Brien?
Oh, only within a couple of days. I mean, but you got to remember, at first, this was like a massive shock to the Houston area and nationally. This went national because everybody's hearing there's this little boy poisoned. Not only that, there were other poison pixie sticks out there. Remember,
really,
O'Brien gave one to each of his children, so that's 2. He gave one to the 2 friends, so that's 4. And then there was a 5th boy. A 5th boy actually came over later, and O'Brien gave him the 5th pixie stick. They couldn't account for that one at first. So now, you get these news reports of child poison from Halloween candy, and then it's like, we think there may be more out there. Please check all your candy. So it was a full-on panic, and it went national.
Kind of put me in the frame of how O'Brien was during that time frame. Like, was he hysterical? Did he know? Like, what's...
But this was an interesting point. You know how sometimes something strikes you as odd at the moment, but you don't really know why until later? So at the hospital, O'Brien's like, beating his hands against the wall. Oh my God, please God, don't take my son. No, not my son, everything. The doctors actually got worried that he may have been poisoned too. And so they lay him down on the gurney and like, okay, we may need to pump your stomach. And almost instantly, it was like a light switch. He went, no, I'm good, thanks. And hops up off of the gurney. Nobody ever saw the kids actually get the pixie sticks. It was O'Brien who got the pixie sticks and gave one to each of the 4 kids. And this is where it gets weird. So naturally, the police are like, oh my God, there's this poison pixie stick with cyanide. Where'd you get it from? O'Brien says, I'm pretty sure we got it from that house. Well, this is what's weird about it. O'Brien's little boy, Tim, and his buddy had knocked on that door. House was dark. No one answered.
Bates said O'Brien went to one house where no one appeared to be home, and after the children had scampered ahead to the next house, O'Brien came off the front porch carrying the pixie sticks. He gave the pixie sticks to the children and then later took them back and said he wanted to stop at his car for a moment. Bates said when O'Brien came back into the Bates house, he returned the pixie sticks to the children. Later that night, Timothy O'Brien died from eating a poisoned pixie stick.
Matter of fact, I had a chance to speak to one of the main prosecutors, the 2 main prosecutors that were able to get a conviction and a death sentence against O'Brien.
There's no question about the fact that the right person was prosecuted.
But Vic Driscoll still lives in Houston. I had a chance to speak with him, and the way he explained it to me.
O'Brien walked up to the door, and he said, knocked on the door, and someone inside kind of opened, whom he didn't see, opened the door and stuck out his hand with a handful of pixie sticks.
I was one of those reporters who followed along the crowd of people through the streets of Pasadena as Ronald Clark O'Brien was pointing out where he thought his child got that pixie stick.
And he took those, and nobody,
So this no-faced person in a dark house that other people had knocked on suddenly opens the door for O'Brien and just hands a bunch of pixie sticks to him.
Right, right. And
that's a terrible story.
And it turns out that guy was worked at Hobby Airport and was at work, and had 100 eyewitnesses.
You think it kind of left a mark on us? Well, Vic Driscoll was here when all that was happening, and he remembers vividly what the city was like.
It raised the prospect of something unknown out there that you couldn't quite see and identify and defend against.
So it was a faceless, nameless child killer was on the prowl in Houston.
Right.
So the pixie sticks, one of the things that came out during the trial is pixie sticks are heat seeking, but yet the pixie sticks that had been given to each of the kids had been folded and stapled shut. And O'Brien had actually bragged to people about this brand new pocket staple that he had got. And then when they search the house, they find scissors and a knife that had traces of the pixie stick sugar on the edges. So when I say, as a career criminal, this guy flunks out of kindergarten, it's these things. And then, of course, the ultimate thing was the insurance problem. Police found out that about 3-4 weeks before Tim was murdered, O'Brien had increased the amount of life insurance he had on his 2 children and decreased the amount of life insurance he had for himself and his wife. And this is
why would you do something like that?
Well, that's the interesting thing, because once this hit the news, what was happening, police started getting a lot of phone calls from people who started remembering conversations with O'Brien. And one of them was from the insurance agent. And Vic Driscoll explained that the insurance agent came in and said, yeah, when he did this, I told him, why would you do something like this? This is backwards. Something else the insurance agent told police that really, really made O'Brien a suspect.
They began hearing about his conversations about asking friends about the effects of cyanide. How much would it take and how often? And he, in the previous few weeks leading up to Halloween, he had talked to about 6 other non-related people about the effects of cyanide, and each one of them thought that was kind of odd at the time. When they inspected all those pixie sticks, they all had the same amount, and it was about 10 times more than it was necessary to kill anybody. he put too much cyanide and left it in the top and didn't mix it. That's why Tim died so quickly.
Was it his hope that all these kids would die and that would throw suspicion off of him?
Yes.
So he didn't have a problem killing 5 or 6 children?
No. And that was his cover. It was going to be random in the neighborhood.
What happened to the other kids?
I mean, it was just honestly by the grace of God that none of them ate their pixie sticks that night. It was just dumb luck, and police were able to gather it up.
Jimmy Bates was betrayed by Ronald Clark O'Brien. The two men and their families became friends at this Pasadena Baptist church.
And in fact, one of the children actually talked years later about why he didn't eat the pixie stick.
I wanted to eat it real bad because I was real proud of it. I thought it was the biggest piece of candy I had. And I thought, man, this is great. I was fixing to open it up and eat it. My mother said, no, don't eat it tonight. Just wait till tomorrow. I just clean the house, the floor's clean. Just wait till tomorrow and eat it outside. And I said, okay, so I put it up.
Mark and his father are convinced Ron O'Brien deserves to die.
Susan, I don't see how anybody can ask or hope to receive more than they've given.
I realized that could have been me instead of him, or me too.
That sounds scary that he had to go through that.
Oh, it was absolutely terrifying, as it was for everybody else.
The whole time I'm listening to you here, I keep thinking to myself, where do you get cyanide at that time and in that day and age?
Right. Well, you could back then. Matter of fact, that was one of the things that Driscoll said came out in evidence is O'Brien actually went to 2 stores. One store he went to sold too much of it and it was too expensive. So he's talking with the guy, saying, that's too much, that's too much. And the guy's like, well, okay, there's another shop down the road that you can buy a smaller quantity for cheaper. Back then you could.
Wow. Let's go back to the wife there, because he was married at this time, and I couldn't imagine being in her shoes during all of this.
Well, that was one of the things that the prosecutors had talked about.
And he told his insurance agent at that time, and don't tell my wife. If you talk to her or you happen to see her, don't tell her that we've done this. So he hid it. He did what was against advice and what nobody would do.
She had stuck by her husband, didn't really want to believe that he would be capable of something like that. However, when they found out about the life insurance, they brought them both down, separated them, and when they told her about the life insurance, that's when everything for her changed.
She had said, I had hoped that they would find the real person and I wouldn't have to be thinking that it was him. But I see now that that's not the case.
His own wife said he was an exaggerator, he was a narcissist to the end. He was the kind of guy, let me explain, this guy was a true definition of a loser. He had 21 jobs in 3 years, bounced his family to 5 different cities. At the time he murdered his son, they had almost no money in the bank account and their car was about to be repossessed. And then it came out they had committed similar insurance frauds in the past, just smaller things, like they had fire insurance on their furniture and somehow their furniture caught fire. So this guy was just a loser to the end, but it's deeper than that. I mean, this is a man, like I said before, who had no problem killing his own children and 3 other kids in the neighborhood just for some insurance money.
Daneen O'Brien has built a new life for herself here in Pasadena. After testifying against her husband, Ron, and helping to send him to prison, she divorced him.
So everybody could kind of go, I mean, who wants to live with that hanging over their heads for the rest of their life, that you were married to or your father was the man who killed Halloween?
Now I can imagine, because, my mom, again, made us look through the candy, take the candy to the police department. So now
to this day,
there's still a lot of law enforcement that warn about the candy and warn about what things are that may be coming out. So it kind of paints the picture on a lot of people's childhoods.
So that's why I said at the beginning, you probably don't realize it, but you've heard of this story in some form or fashion. It's gotten changed over the years and all. You probably don't know the name Ronald Clark O'Brien, but this is, again, one of the reasons you have to check your candy and why there's that somewhat fear in the back of every parent's mind when their kids go out trick-or-treating.
My feelings are optimistic.
So I'm guessing at that point, that's right when O'Brien really cracked.
Oh, no. He never cracked. He never admitted his guilt. I mean, you talk about, this dude is the ultimate narcissist. He never, ever, ever cracked.
Did he ever testify at his own trial? What did he say?
I didn't do it. I would never do it. How could I do that? I mean, the cornerstone of any child killer defense is what parent would kill their child, and he, jury didn't buy it.
Because I have no guilt, and because I know inside that I didn't do it, and the people that are close to me and know me as an individual know I couldn't have done it, and I know that the Lord knows I didn't do it. So I've really got nothing to be scared about or afraid about.
And it was Ronald O'Brien himself, according to the jury, and I concur, that gave an 8-year-old boy the death penalty.
Kim Manganero says Ronald Bryan is ready for his execution, but still thinks he'll get a last-minute stay.
He's doing okay. I mean, they're treating him very well. People need to let go of that.
Prison guards blocked off areas near the Walls unit to keep any protesting crowds away from the entrance. O'Brien ate a last meal of steak and potatoes and took a shower. He's given prison officials his will and asked that his corneas be given to an eye bank. If no judge or the governor stops the execution before midnight, O'Brien will be taken from his holding cell into the death chamber and given the lethal injection.
What was one of the big takeaways that you had?
All those things I told you about his life and all the talk about cyanide, the stapler, and just how he did everything in the insurance money. I'll never forget Vic Driscoll, that prosecutor we've been hearing from, delivered the closing argument in the trial. And I remember it was really, really powerful. I was going to read part of it here. O'Brien did not have the truth in him, even when the truth would do him better. He has used his friends, his family, and his church. He sacrificed his only son, not on the altar of God as Abraham might have done, but on the altar of his own greed. And that pretty much sums up the guy perfectly.
What did you feel like when you read that?
Sad. And for reasons thinking about no matter what's going on in that guy's life, no matter how many jobs he's lost, how many cities he's bounced around, whatever was in him that was so broken that allowed him to kill his own child. And again, other children have no problem doing that too. I can't fathom that. I can't understand how a person could ever get to that point.
Ronald Clark O'Brien's execution was cheered the moment spectators caught sight of eyewitnesses coming out of the death house. O'Brien never admitted killing his son, but in the last statement asked and offered forgiveness.
I would forgive all who have taken part in any way in my death. Also to anyone I have offended in any way during my 39 years. I pray and ask your forgiveness, just as I forgive anyone who offended me in any way.
Robert, we've been spending a lot of time in the evidence room lately. We've got these murder cases all around us, but when it came to O'Brien's case, what was unique about it?
There wasn't much left.
Those holding candles outside executions usually want the killer kept alive. Last night, some who wanted Ronald O'Brien to die held candles.
For such a notorious murder, I was surprised that more of the court exhibits, trial exhibits, weren't still there. Really, it was a file, and it just had some pretty dry procedural court documents in it. A lot of the research that we did came from our own KPRC2 archives. We also went to the downtown public library, where they have all the old Houston Post, Houston Chronicle newspapers on microfilm. That helped as well. And then Driscoll actually gave us a book called Capital Murder, which dedicated a couple of chapters to these murders and the trial.
So what did you find interesting in that book?
A lot. There were pictures from the day of the trial. There was even a picture of one of the little boys who was given one of the poison Pixie Sticks being let in to the courtroom. That was it. Got a shot of the actual Pixie Sticks themselves, and there was a shot of the funeral at the church, and that was another weird thing that came up during the trial.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when Tim's funeral was happening, one of the parishioners remembered having a conversation with O'Brien, and O'Brien saying that he envied his son because his son was in a better place now and didn't have to face the trials of life like he did. And that parishioner actually came back and testified that who envies their dead child?
Robert, did anybody really come out and officially say they forgave him?
No. How do you forgive that?
I mean, seriously, how do you forget that?
After midnight, O'Brien was given the lethal drug dose. O'Brien's ex-wife is relieved he's dead. Damien O'Brien says she doesn't hate him, she just feels nothing. Damien sees the execution as the wiping of the slate, a chance to get on with life.
And that does it for our second episode of The Evidence Room. Remember, we're going to be streaming every Wednesday a new case. Next week, we've got Pickaxe Killer, Carla Faye Tucker.